It almost bottomed out. Nice. So the new radiator that I bought for this thing just got here in the mail. This is for a Yamaha. I just looked it up and I already forgot what it is. It's for a Yamaha Grizzly 550 to 700 cc. I really wanted to make sure I got a radiator that is big enough and, you know, equivalent to the cc size of the engine we're using, because I definitely don't want to make sure we don't have any overheating issues with this thing, especially because I don't think this thing's going to get much airflow. Wow, it's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. So basically, this is pretty much the only spot for the radiator. Just going to have to go back here, kind of sticking up a little bit. So I am going to try to mount it as low as possible. Man, it's like a perfect fit in there. I am going to be putting radiator fans and everything and trying to mount it as low as possible, but obviously the higher it is, the more airflow it's going to get. So, yep, this is where the radiator is going. So, hopefully that works, and hopefully it gets a decent amount of airflow back there. So let's start working on finalizing the drivetrain on this thing. First thing we need to do is weld these CV axles together. Now this one's going to be kind of challenging because this one is slightly smaller diameter than this one, just by, I think it was 10 or 15 thou or something like that. I need to remeasure it. So I need to figure out a way to get these perfectly aligned. And I'm also thinking of just welding these in place, so therefore I can just make sure by spinning this that it's running true and not, you know, wobbling or anything like that. So I need to run to Tractor Supply to buy more of these because I don't have any more, because I don't want to use these. We already welded on it. Once you weld it, stuff warps, and we need to have this perfectly aligned. Measure the difference between this one, and then put this in the mill, machine half of that diameter off of, or half of that dimension off of one side to hopefully get these aligned perfectly. So just ground in the giant bevels on here to be able to weld these together and be able to get a 100% TIG weld. Now, the difference between these two is this one's the slightly bigger one. This one is 0.907, and then this one is 0.9043. So that's a difference of, what did I just say? 27 thou. So this one's 27 thou, smaller diameter than this one. And I think the easiest way to do this would be to take just a piece of pipe. I'll put it in the mill, machine half of this down, so therefore this will fit on here, and then machine one half to where it's, what's half of that number? That's 27 thou, that's what, 13 and a half, I believe. I'll just machine half of this, 13 and a half thou shorter than the other side, and then once I clamp both of these together, that should make them align perfectly, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that'll work. porosity, and I have no idea why. It was welding fine yesterday, and I tried cleaning it, I tried grinding it away. Every time I struck the arc, porosity. I have new tungsten, new cup. This is the joys of TIG welding. You have porosity sometimes, and you have no idea why. Yep. No idea why there's porosity on here. I've tried cleaning it several times, and yet it still keeps bubbling. Yay! Alright, after many hours of fighting porosity, I finally got the weld to the point where it is now almost the same diameter as the axle. Now, holy crap, I have never had that bad of porosity issues. I almost was thinking at first, like, maybe this is just unweldable steel, maybe this is there's like a contamination in there somewhere, but this wasn't the only thing I was welding. I was also testing on plate steel. I did grind the mill scale off. I heated it up with a torch to burn the moisture out, and I was still having porosity on these. So I almost think it's my torch. It is around 5 or 6 or like 4 or 5 years old. I mean, it is an awesome torch, but maybe there's like a crack or like I have no idea. I have no idea. But like I said before, I was playing around with the tip, the angle on the tip of the tungsten. I do know that makes it. I think it's the more shallow of an angle, the deeper the weld penetrates, and the steeper of that angle, the wider the weld is. I have never heard of it causing porosity or not, if the certain angles. But I was playing around with the angle. Normally, I'll put a side-by-side comparison. Normally, the one on the left is what I normally weld with, but this time, yesterday, I ground it to where it was a much more sharp taper, the one on the right, and then magically the porosity went away. It wasn't completely gone. It was there's certain times where it's just welding, and all of a sudden, oh, there's more porosity. Just stop, grind it out, regrind the tungsten again, and then it goes away. But I've never heard that being where the angle of the tungsten causes porosity or not. But was that the case? I don't know. It seemed to fix it once I did. I have no idea. So, but I will look into getting a new torch because this one is kind of old and I've kind of beat it up a little bit, kind of throwing it around a little. Not throwing it around, but I'm not gentle with this thing. But I'll look into getting a new one because I'm hoping it's just the torch or something. Anyway, because I was having such issues with TIG welding, normally when I get it to the point where the weld is almost the same diameter as the steel, normally I do a 3 cover pass to build it just a little bit bigger, and normally I TIG weld that, but because of the issues with TIG welding, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm going to do something I've never done before, which is sleeve it. I have this tubing that is the same inner diameter as the round stock. I cut it in half. I took a little bit more material off of the edges, so therefore I can put this over the weld, and I'm going to MIG weld this for added security and just peace of mind that this will not snap. Just because right now, I mean, it may be strong enough, but because I was having such porosity issues, I tried my best to get rid of the porosity whenever there was porosity. It's not like I just went over it and just kept going. Once we get that done, then the axles are done, finally. Then we can start working on finishing the differential and getting the brake calipers installed. Yeah, there ain't no way that is breaking. Now, first thing we're gonna do with the differential is we're running into some clearance issues with the bolts that bolt the differential onto the frame and these bolts that go to here. So we're just gonna have to chuck these in the lathe and machine these heads down just a tiny little bit. Now, these are the bearings that hold the differential in place, and I made it to where these bearings are super tight tolerance on here to where you have to heat this part up for it to expand, and then the bearing fits in there, and it cools down and contracts and holds the bearing in place. Now, I didn't really think about this, is one thing that happened when the part cooled down is the bearing, these bearings did not spin anywhere near as freely as they do now. One of them was worse than the other one, but the bad one was like, yeah, I can barely get the bearing to spin, which is not good because the inner bearing race slides onto the differential easily like that, and we don't want it to where the bearing doesn't want to spin and it ends up spinning on this surface right here, that is not good. We don't need that to happen. So now I was thinking about chucking this in the lathe and getting it to run perfectly true in the 4-jaw chuck and then just taking a couple thou off of this inner diameter, which we could do that. But I think the faster way to do this would be to just take this Dremel tool router looking thing with a sanding drum on the end of it and then just sand a little bit of the surface on here. We don't want it to be a super loose fit, but we don't need it to be a super tight tolerance fit. Basically just want to be able to press it in with a hammer and then the clip holds it in place. Yeah, that is a lot better. It actually now spins freely. Now for the grease nipple, I'm just gonna put it right here in the middle. So I used the blue thread locker on all these bolts because we definitely don't want these backing out. I also had to put JB Weld on these two holes. There's holes right here that go all the way through, and it's just to help oil circulate and everything, but we don't want that anymore, so I had to seal these off with JB Weld. And I also used a little bit of Honda Bond to seal the surfaces between here and right there, just a little bit better. I also mostly packed this with grease, but before I put the CV axles in place, I'll squirt a bunch more grease in here and I'll make sure it's on the surface where the CV axle spins, and then just make sure to put a little bit on the CV axle before finally installing them. I'm using this just multi-purpose lithium grease. I tried Googling like what kind of grease do you use, and everybody was just using just multi-purpose lithium grease, so it's what I have, so hopefully it's the right stuff. I don't know. Alright, now that these CV axles are welded, we can pack these full of grease. I bought these are ideally for a Polaris, but I think CV grease is CV grease. And then I can put the clips back on. So right now these are just zip ties holding them in place, which are not strong enough. Alright, so I bought the CV boot clamping tool and these things. Let's see how they work. So, CV boot is back in place, got a new clamp on there. Also, I can't forget, I need to put the clip back on here before I reinstall these into the differential. Alright, so the differential is now finished. Now, next thing we need to do is we need to figure out how we're mounting the brake calipers to the frame. I'm thinking of just putting one right here, and the other one is going to go just right here. This is a pretty good spot for these. There's nothing else that's going to go here. So basically we just need to make some brackets that bolt onto these, and then I'll weld those to the frame. So I made it to where the bolt on the bottom is so impossible to get to with either a wrench or a socket that this is what I have to do. So basically just take an extension, I have to put it through the sprocket, put the socket in place, and that way I can reach the bolt, tighten it up, then I use a 1/4 inch wrench on the end of the extension to be able to tighten it. Yeah, this is the only way to access the bolt to, ouch, ow, to be able to tighten and loosen it. Yep, that's the only way to tighten that bolt. So now that we got the brake calipers installed on the axle, that is pretty much finished, and now we can start working on rebuilding this engine finally. So like I said, I got new pistons, new rings, new gasket set for this thing. Now actually, before we start rebuilding this thing, let's first actually clean it, because there's just a lot of corrosion, a lot of dirt buildup on this, especially on this side. So let's clean it first, and then I can start working on honing the cylinders, getting the new pistons in place, and start reassembling this thing. Yeah, this thing definitely needs a good cleaning. Also, the person who rebuilt this engine last put gasket maker on literally every single gasket on this engine, which either he just didn't know what he was doing, or he didn't bother getting new gaskets for this thing and just reused the old ones and just put gasket maker everywhere. So, but yeah, I'm gonna be cleaning that off and putting new gaskets on this thing. But first, we need to just heavily clean this. So that is a lot better. Holy crap, were these things really dirty. Now, I started looking into, how to hone cylinders. Mainly, what oil do you use when honing cylinders? Apparently there's such a thing called honing oil, which obviously I don't have. Other people were saying you can use kerosene. I don't have kerosene. Diesel, I don't have diesel. Baby oil, don't have that. So other people were saying that you can use water or WD-40, but those aren't apparently that great. So I think tomorrow I'm just gonna run out to AutoZone and see if they have honing oil. But for now, I'm gonna continue cleaning stuff. There's a water pump I need to clean, the cylinder head, the fuel pump, the other cover. So I'll just clean that stuff, and then tomorrow I'll run out to see if I can get honing oil. If I can't find it, I'll just get diesel or kerosene or something like that. So, alright, we're now ready to hone the cylinders. Now, I went to AutoZone to try and find honing oil. Apparently no one has ever heard of honing oil, so I just went and got some diesel, because apparently that's good enough to lubricate the cylinders while you're honing. It's either that or kerosene, but diesel's easier to find. So, alright, let's do this. So while it does look better, you can still see little black pits from just tiny little pitting on the cylinder. So I think I need to keep going. Alright, so I think I got it down to nice and shiny metal, so now I need to put the cross hatching in. So just go really fast back and forth. Alright, I think that's good. Let's just go with that. Alright, so we honed the cylinders. Those look good, and I did double check the piston ring gap just to verify that they are within spec, and they are. So now let's finally start working on reassembling this thing. Okay, here we go. Let's do this. Okay, so the manual says put a block of wood on here. Oh, this thing's heavy. Oh. Alright, this is gonna be a challenge. I have to compress the piston ring while trying to coax it on. My arm starts cramping the first like 10 seconds. This is a challenge. I could really use some help. I can't really get my hand under here to get the piston rings to compress. Whoa. Yep. That made my heart jump. I think I got it. Nice. That was, I honestly didn't think I was gonna get that for a little bit, but I was able to do it. Alright, so we have to torque these to spec, and I can't really get a torque wrench in there. I also tried finding a smaller torque wrench, but even that won't, fit in there. These are really recessed into the block, so I just actually ran to Lowe's, and I bought some of these doohickeys. I was kind of thinking about just eyeballing this, but I'm like, nah, I want to do this right, so I bought some of these. These are called crow's feet. I've always seen these. I never knew what these were for until I looked it up, and apparently these go on the end of a torque wrench for this exact applications. Therefore, you can actually get in here and be able to torque something like this down to spec and everything. So I think it's 25 foot-pounds. Yeah, 24 to 26 foot-pounds. Okay. Okay, I like to sneak up on them instead of doing, like basically tightening them all at once. I like to do it incrementally, so it takes a lot longer, but I think it's a better way to do it. Now, eventually I do want to paint this cylinder head cover, but I want to paint it the same color as the secondary color of whatever we're painting that thing, and I haven't really figured that out yet. So for now, let's just leave it unpainted, and then once we paint and finalize that thing, I will also paint this. Yeah, now it feels like it has good compression. Now, I did buy a brand new water pump belt, but it hasn't gotten here yet, so I'm just going to use this one for now. This one's not terrible, it's just, I want to replace it. It was only 10 bucks. But just using this one for now, and then once the new one gets here, we'll put that one on. So, we finally got the engine back together. It's amazing how much better something looks when you just simply clean it, but this thing has a lot better compression. Yeah, so, before it was, I could very easily turn this thing over, but now it feels like it actually has good compression. Now, I'm not going to bother cleaning the carburetors just yet. We can do that later. We don't really need to do it right now. But let's get this thing back in the frame and also get the jack shaft reinstalled. It does sit a lot lower now, but we can adjust the preload on the shocks to get it to stand up better. Yeah, I know the belt is super loose right now, but once we get this thing ready to test, I'll tighten this up properly. Yeah, let's tighten up the preload on the rear shocks. Nice. Yeah, this thing definitely now that it's off the table, it definitely looks way shorter, but I have been staring at this almost at eye level for probably a month by now, so now that it's finally off, it definitely looks smaller. Now, right now, all the shocks are at the adjustable dampening is at its softest point, so... Ooh, it almost bottomed out. Yeah, good thing I bought. This thing weighs almost nothing in the front. Now I want to adjust it to where the adjustable dampening is at its strongest point. Just see what it does after that. Ooh, wow. A little bit better in the front. See if it almost bottoms out again. Definitely a lot better. A lot better. So one question I've always been wondering ever since I've been building this is, if I don't add a wheelie bar to this, how high is it going to stand up? Basically, at what point is the tail going to hit the ground? So... yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good wheelie. I think that's almost to the point where I may... It's almost to the point where I may want to add plexiglass to the bottom of this thing, so therefore I can see where I'm going while I'm wheeling. Or maybe I just leave this open, and that should be enough to where I can mostly see where I'm going. Nice. Yeah, pretty much right there is the max wheelie that this thing can do. So it's definitely not in any danger of flipping, which is good. This thing kind of makes a lot of noise. So we are very close to being able to try to fire up the engine for the first time, but we still need to do the radiator, the gas tank, the oil tank, the cover for the CVT. We have to do all the controls, the throttle, the brakes, brake pedals, as well as wiring, and probably a couple other things I forgot. So, now, I know you guys kind of hate it when I bounce back and forth between projects, or when I start another project when I'm in the middle of a bunch of other projects. But for this thing, I'm going to put this thing to the side for a little bit, and then there's another small project that I want to start. It's not going to take that long, and once that thing is either finished or close to finished, we will continue working on this project. But I've been working on this thing, I think this is video 12, and aside from when I took the two-seater to Kentucky, I've been working on this thing for 12 videos straight, 12 weeks straight. So I kind of want to take a little break from this thing and work on the other project for a little bit, and then we will continue working on this thing and do all the stuff I just said, radiator, gas tank, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I am really glad that, 2 videos ago, I spent as much time as I did modifying the steering as well as moving the seat back, because this thing is actually pretty comfortable. Now that I did those changes, this thing is really comfortable and not super cramped like it used to be. But anyway, guys, that's it for this video. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see ya in the next video. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I've been at this for 2 hours. I've taken this apart, cleaned it a couple times. I've had to re-grind it a couple times. So now there's a huge gap. And I can't get rid of the porosity. I don't know what else to try. I've literally tried everything. It's, thank you for that very loud, obnoxious fan. Yes. I don't know what to do now. I've tried everything I can think of. There was no porosity yesterday. Didn't have any problem like that. Today, just nothing's working. I don't know what it is. So, thankfully, I was able to figure it out. Basically, I spent, I don't know how many, probably like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, trying this, trying that. This is the frustrating part of TIG welding. Sometimes you have porosity and you have no idea why, and then you just keep fiddling around with stuff. and then something magically happens and then it works fine. So one thing I changed that seemed to work. Basically, all I did was I put a tighter bevel on the tip of the tungsten. Once I did that, somehow magically the porosity went away. So for the longest time, I was pondering, like, maybe this is just an unweldable steel, but anytime I tried to do any plate steel, I would still have porosity issues. So I knew it was my setup, not the base metal. It wasn't the filler metal creating the porosity, it was I think it was the setup. So I was able to get a little bit more weld on this one. This one on this side needs maybe 2 or 3 more passes. The one on that side, because that's the one I had was having the most issues with. That one I need a lot more passes, but at least, thankfully, I solved the porosity issue. So really? That one was working fine. I just did another pass on that one. I move over to this side and porosity again. Yay! Oh, I love this. Wow, this is